Yeah, our last article from Natural News here, aspartame has been renamed and is now being marketed as a natural sweetener. The new name for aspartame is amino sweet. And basically, the details of aspartame's history are lengthy, but the point remains that the carcinogen was illegitimately approved as a food additive through heavy-handed prodding by a powerful corporation with its own interests in mind. Practically all drugs and food additives are approved by the FDA not because science shows they are safe, but because companies essentially lobby the FDA with monetary payoffs and complete the agency's multi-million-dollar approval process, which is what we were just explaining of how the rest of these have gone through and how all these different pills go through and the rest, when they have all these side effects anyways that they even admit on television. We've heard the crazy side effects.
Yep. And there's a documentary, Aspartame Sweet Misery, which goes into explaining that Donald Rumsfeld, our former Department of Defense Secretary of Defense and war criminal and prominent neocon throughout multiple administrations, uses political connections in order to get that toxic substance approved as a sweetener through the FDA by manipulating the amount of members on the board and that kind of a thing. And another pretty disturbing health article. This is from Dr. Mercola, Mercola.com. Stop using natural deodorants until you read this, is the title. It says the reason people try to avoid aluminum deodorant is because of the possible link to Alzheimer's disease. In 1988, a truck driver accidentally dumped 20 tons of aluminum sulfate in a town's drinking water. 20 years later, they're finding a higher incidence of Alzheimer's in the people of the town. So Dr. McCullough's comments in here say, let's get this straight. All evidence to date points to aluminum as a poison that serves no beneficial role in your body and should be avoided. Aluminum blocks your body's detoxifying output, which would be your sweat glands, and contributes to cancer, and high concentrations are actually found in the tissue of breast cancer patients in a 2007 study by the Journal of Inorganic Biochemistry.
These are the so-called natural deodorants that are, they're not like the speed stick or other things.
Which is another manipulation of language, like enhanced interrogation rather than torture and that kind of thing.
Well, that brings us to our international news. First article here from Press TV. Return Falcons to Argentina, says Chavez to Queen. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez has called on Queen Elizabeth II of Britain to leave the disputed Malvinas, the Falklands island, to Argentina, saying that the time of empires has long expired. The Latin America leader warned that in the event of a war over the island, Argentina would not be alone, as they were in the previous war that happened in the early 1980s there.
Another Press TV story entitled Good Luck, Netanyahu Wish for Dubai Hitmen, was about the men behind a recent assassination of senior Hamas commander Mahmoud al-Mubah. The January 20th foul play took place in a Dubai hotel, was caught on closed-circuit TV cameras, and led the Dubai police to issue arrest warrants for 11 suspects. Dubai Police Chief Dahi Khalfam Tamim said that new evidence including credit card payments, fake British passports, and phone calls made by suspects, confirmed Mossad's involvement in Mahmoud's terror operation. And Mossad, by the way, is Israel's version of our CIA.
Yes. And
Israel also is the largest funded country, especially with military expenditures and assistance by our country, and pales everything else in comparison. So in Dubai, the chief has called for Mossad head former Army General Min Dagan to actually be arrested in respect to this incident.
So Interpol put out a warrant on 10 or 11 of these guys who were involved in the hit. Of course, no one really thinks it's going to go anywhere. It's probably just for good press for them to put it out there. Who knows who's actually going to be caught or if anyone will be brought to justice. But it was clearly, murder being done by an intelligence group,
state-sponsored execution
in a foreign country,
public,
which is totally criminal, completely illegitimate, and these issues really need to be discussed so that people know about it.
It's an extraordinarily troubling practice, should be completely unacceptable, and just on that note, we should completely disengage from contributing to the Israeli government's tyrannical policies, but it's unlikely because we have much of our own here.
Absolutely. From The Independent, out of Britain, plan to oust Saddam drawn up 2 years before the invasion. A secret plan to foster an internal British coup against Saddam Hussein was drawn up by the government 2 years before the invasion of Iraq. So we already know about in our country that they had essentially planned, the Bush administration, to go to war in Iraq before September 11th even happened. It turns out now that the British government as well already had plans to try and oust Saddam before September 11th even happened. It shows that Blair's intent was always for regime change from an early stage and before 9/11, which is really a key point to understand here, that these guys had this stuff already planned, which feeds into the idea of 9/11 being an act which was complicit by our governments in order to get us into these wars.
Yeah, and also the Downing Street memo scandal also showed that they were willing to go into Iraq and that the facts were being built around the policy to invade. In other UK news, this is coming from Wired, the UK website. Future police meet the UK's armed robot drones. It's about the drones which will retire helicopters since they're actually cheaper. These drones will be equipped with long-range acoustic devices, LRAD, which use sound to drive people away, and that's just supposed to be your replacement for the Hellfire missiles, and who knows what other kind of devices they can put on them.
Interesting. Well, from another British newspaper, the Daily Mail, thousands protest in Tokyo against U.S. military presence in Japan. They marched against the presence of our military bases in Okinawa mostly. Residents have complained for years about noise, pollution, and crime around the base. And those are just minor issues, really. If I was a Japanese citizen, I would be looking at my country's sovereignty in this issue. They signed away, essentially, almost all of their sovereignty for having their own military, for being able to defend their own country back in World War II, when their country was essentially given over to the Rockefeller interests from the United States. Now, as a Japanese citizen, they should be definitely trying to get rid of military bases that are in their country. It's totally illegitimate to be there decades and decades later, to not allow them to have their own military. It just seems highly imperialist to me. World War II is not going on. It hasn't been going on for a long time, and these issues we need to get past so that the Japanese can have their country back.
In other news, the U.S. ramifications on another country, this is from Press TV. Iraq to sue U.S. Britain over depleted uranium bombs. It says, during the first year of the U.S. and British invasion of Iraq, both countries repeatedly used bombs containing depleted uranium. Depleted uranium actually violates the Geneva Conventions and is a toxic waste product from nuclear processing that is actually turned into an asset and is used for, piercing armor and that kind of a thing. Atomic radiation has increased the number of babies born with defects in the southern provinces of Iraq. Doctors say they've been struggling to cope with the rise in the number of cancer cases, especially in cities subjected to heavy U.S. and British bombardment. The high rate of birth defects and cancer cases will move in the coming years to the central and northern provinces of Iraq, since the radiation may penetrate the soil and water by air. The Ministry of Iraq seeks to get compensation for the victims of these bombs, and hopefully they will stop all use of depleted uranium, because it's a complete travesty to humanity.
Yeah, it's just shows right there it's already an illegal substance, just like white phosphorus and the rest, and they just get used and dumped all over civilians, and no one seems to do anything about it. The governments get to go along. These guys go out of power like the Bush administration. No one's been arrested by the Obama administration. Absolutely criminal. So, I mean, this is disgusting.
And not to mention how much people are paid for these dealers of death.
Making money off of it. Yeah, it's disgusting. From the London Evening Standard, also out of the United Kingdom, we have an article. Transportation Secretary Lord Adonis sought today to allay privacy fears over the introduction of full body scans at their airports. They are having the full body scanners there, which we've explained to you about before, the naked scanners that take a full picture of your body. He says at the moment, people accept that they are subject to a pat-down. A pat-down search is a pretty intrusive procedure, but people accept it. He says a body scanner is in the same category. So what he's saying is they've incrementally made people accept losing their Fourth Amendment right, losing their right to privacy, losing your normal and alienable right that you won't be searched by a bunch of goons at the airport.
And now you're going to be radiated.
Yeah, and you'll be radiated by these body scanners, as we already covered as well. And he says, right there, that people have already subjected themselves and been okay with pat-downs, so this is just the next step. Now we need to have them accept more tyranny. But that's how it always goes with these people.
Well, we have some more news on the body scanners, and this is from The Guardian in the UK. New scanners break child porn laws. This is a very interesting angle to take on this. It says that images created by the machines are so graphic they amount to virtual strip searching and have called for safeguards to protect the privacy of passengers involved. This is privacy campaigners are saying this. Ministers in the UK now face having to exempt under 18-year-old people from the scans or face delays of introducing their legislation to ensure airport security staff do not commit offenses under child pornography laws. And the demands from civil liberties groups for safeguards against these images from body scanners are including concerns to those of celebrities to not end up on the internet, which actually it was shown because they try to reassure you that the images are deleted and only seen by a single security officer in a remote location. But there was a Bollywood star recently had his naked picture of his body being distributed throughout airport staff. So it just shows, and they even say it right there, including those of celebrities. So I mean, the story is continually breaking that these things are massive violations,
are coming at this,
and they're ripe to abuse.
So people are coming at this from numerous angles, and this is an angle against the use of these against children. I've also seen recently religious groups have been coming against this. Muslim, Jewish, Christian, all groups have come together saying that this was a violation of religious morals or religious doctrine.
On a non-religious basis, people around the world, all of us should refuse to partake in these scans and no longer subject ourselves under duress to giving up our rights when we want to travel on the monopoly of power that is
you have a right to travel, and for them to come out with restrictions against that is completely immoral. Our next article comes from Press TV. Iran calls for global chemical disarmament. Iran says all countries that possess chemical weapons, especially the United States, must decommission their respective arsenals as soon as possible, referring to the fact that the Islamic Republic is one of the biggest victims of chemical weapons during the Iraq-Iran war, which of course weapons were sold to both sides for that war. Horrible atrocities committed with these chemical weapons. And it actually ties into the article we were discussing earlier about how the U.S. is trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, we won't have any toxic stuff to explode in the air near towns and expose people to the byproducts. In other news, more toxic-related topic, the BBC reports India puts on hold first GM genetically modified food crop on safety grounds. This GM crop, which underwent trials and received approval from the government in 2009, still has heated debate, which continues, calling for an independent scientific study. In 2002, GMO cotton was approved by the government there, which was supposed to be pest-resistant from Monsanto. Farmers paid actually higher prices than people around the globe and took up debt to buy it. They had advertisers pitching a bling-bling kind of flashy lifestyle you'd be rewarded with if you buy this stuff. And they ended up taking up large amounts of debt and got into worse debt when the pest problem actually was worse with this genetically modified crop. And they had to buy pesticides with more credit. And suicides soon followed to escape the debt rather than to sell their family's land. The Punjabi farmers are very proud and some of the best farmers we've had on this planet, and they've been completely undermined and destroyed on a massive level by these kind of crops.
Yeah, it's criminal to be attacking people's food along with everything else they're attacking.
Which is why we have so much migration and stuff into our country alone, just from our neighboring Mexico, because we've destroyed agriculture there with these same kind of crops.
With corn specifically. From the BBC, climate skepticism is on the rise, a BBC poll shows. A poll of 1,001 adults, 25% did not think global warming was happening, up 10% from last year. And only 26% believed that climate change was happening and was now established as largely man-made. So really low numbers there from the United Kingdom, one of the top propagators of this whole climate change issue in the first place.
In more climate controversy, this is from the Associated Press. Netherlands adds to UN climate report controversy by asking the IPCC to explain another inaccurate claim that more than half of the Netherlands are under sea level, when in reality only 26% is.
Yeah, it's weird that they would just have this many falsities in their reports. It seems like an easy thing to look at.
Well, it says that they were going to fix it, and it was on the agenda multiple times, but they never got to it. Sure.
From the Telegraph, despite the hot air, the Antarctic is not warming up. Professor Eric Steg claimed to prove that the Antarctic has been heating up when he published a paper in Nature, which was heavily promoted by the BBC.